Hello, my friends. Thanks for coming. This is the original transcript of a meditation that I did on the species consciousness level that surrounds the earth. And it begins. There is a gap or a void that we need to jump or bridge or leap to approach the hub city, which is what I called it at that time. Often the hub city is mistaken as heaven because, for one thing, the entryway to the city seems to be an arch. There seems to be a gateway. Also, the city is energized in such a way that it seems to be a place. In comparison to the lack of energy around it, it does appear to be heaven. Its appeal from the outside. It's good that people gravitate toward this when they are aware of the general direction of this point of energy focus in the universe. They look toward it. If it is thought of as heaven, then that is fine. Anything that leads them to it. And in a sense, it is heaven because it is the very apex of the loop back into physical. It is the high point. It is the furthermost stepping back or stepping away that we can do and still be involved in a physical potential incarnation. And so from a distance, this looks like it could be heaven. But of course, anybody and everybody who desires to be here is admitted. It's not exclusive in this sense, but anyone who is healed, who is prepared, who has focused enough will, can achieve entrance into this phenomena in this level of energy. So when approaching the hub city, it appears from the outside to be a place of light, sort of floating in space. If we needed to have a visual representation of it. But of course, what I am seeing when I approach the hub city is just the edge of it and nothing resembling the totality of the possible experience here. And I've had experience with this place. I've been here a couple of times. I've seen some of the workings, and I have drawn information from it. So in a way, it's almost more challenging for me to think of fresh, incomprehensive questions regarding this. So I ask for patience and assistance in this meditation. What I'm really seeking today is a description of the energy that makes up this place, the functions that are possible here, and when people come to this level of energy, what are they doing in their personal process? And the answer is coming. When one comes to this level, it is only after total completion of the prior life experience. This is really a turning point, and it actually is more of a position of newness, of exploration, of forward thinking, of planning ahead, of looking forward. Because when somebody is complete enough in their prior experience to be compelled to move on with their continuity, they are totally healed. Their prior life experience is sealed. In other words, it is as sealed and processed as much as that prior life will ever become. This is in the sense that all the choices that one wants to retain as memory of what you experienced in the prior life is completely processed. I mean, you can think of this as food in a canning jar. It's sealed, it's done with. It doesn't mean you can't take the contents of that jar out and look at them. It just means that the processing of entering the data, so to speak, the memories, the processing of entering and placing the prior life information in that jar is done, is accomplished. It'll never be added to again. It completely contains all the desired experiential distillation of the prior life. So the prior life is at this point diminished as an identifying part of the self. In other words, you identify yourself right now with the life you are living, and you will continue to identify yourself primarily as this person that you are now, not necessarily in a name or a bodily way, but in the purpose that you came to accomplish in this lifetime, in the experience you actually gleaned from this lifetime, in the flavor or the tone of them. In the review, you're so immersed in the experience of the lifetime that you are in. And this immersion continues throughout all of the after-death processes. As necessary prerequisite for this step off of the prior life work, the necessity is becoming identified, less having to do with the prior life and more having to do with continuity of experience. In other words, you're not continuing Gretchen's experience. You are continuing experience, period. This is a real distinction in the selfhood that has to be made in order to pass through and participate in this next level. So your self-identity, yes, your experience as Gretchen will be carried with you in memory like a package, but it will not be your primary self-experiencing mechanism. Now, this is difficult to conceive of, I'm sure. Even if a person hearing this might agree that the expression of selfhood is within the choices and within the continuity of the experience, if they can get to that point of self-identity, where they are relating to themselves not as their body, not relating to themselves as what others identify them as, if they have gone through all the processes and steps and learned to know themselves very clearly, the step beyond of expressing the continuity of experience, not devoid of a self-knowing expression, but the prior life is not uppermost, not prominent. And this is the primary level of self-realization. Let's look at what the level of self-realization would be like in approaching this leg or step of the self's continuity. What it consists of primarily in this experience configuration is a strong species identity, because the knowing of the self, the most tangible continuous expression of selfhood, now has to do with species choice. That choice the personality had made at some point upon entering as an expression of God, upon entering the manifesting level. You step back from the self-knowingness as identified with the person you were in the prior life, or even in any of your past lives. In the most tangible way, your identity is your species identification. And so you know yourself to be continuing experience as a Homo sapien. Of course, any radical distinction or delineation is completely absent here because you are so far from the particular body that you had. There's less of a distinction of gender, although gender is still an identifying modality tonally, you might retain some of a gender slant. But all that can be taken up and put off. It's not a strong identification, but the species certainly and definitely is a stronger avenue of self-knowing. Someone who had made a gender choice within a species many times over with that focus might retain somewhat of that tone even at the hub city. And so recognition of other people that occurs on this level is relatively intangible. I had an idea of what people look like at this level. They don't look like people. They look like people in an energy form, not really like ghosts. I wouldn't call them ghosts. They don't have faces as much as a head shape. The body seems insignificant or wispy. They don't really have a form here. You're still your mind and your soul. You don't have the idea of the self as the last person being projected very strongly. It's going to be kind of misleading. It's hard to describe what the visualization of the mind soul would be in this energy. But suffice to say that there is within the species identity The ability to distinguish where you start and another person starts. In other words, the boundaries of the energy that is you. You can tell what you consist of and what another person consists of. You are not merged. There is not an energy overlap. You're not ameliorated. You're still an energy unit to and of yourself in your own energy identity. You can recognize and acknowledge other energy units that are other mind-soul dynamic combinations of other species entities. And so the recognition on this level is not one of looks, but more one of I am I and you are you, and they are they. You do have a feeling of individualism in this energy. The memory package of the prior life in terms of being your most recent memory is certainly the freshest, strongest, and most accessible. If one were to need to, in terms of relating to another person's energy, to flash an identity badge, most often chosen would be the memory identification of the prior life. But that's not your primary self-identity. That's just the distinction we're trying to make here. In terms of visualization, it would be more like fish swimming in a school. They are known as individuals, and yet the similarities are stronger than the individualness or differences. Do you see what we mean? The differences are more subtle, less tangible. You are more the same because you are distilled to your species identity at this place or plane of energy. And so you are more the same than you are different. And that's why there is no sense of competition here, why there is no evil. Nobody infringes or impacts on another person, unwillingly or unwanted. But it is an interactive place. This is a place primarily of learning. As you know, this place could be identified as the human species consciousness pool, and indeed in many ways it is, because the experience of the self as species are all recorded and in some way registered. Let me go down here. I may have to cut this section. Choice is very much a part of this level of experience in the redirection of life experience. But more than the redirection of life experience, initially, this level of energy is a reassociation and a re-entry into the original choice of species and the identity of the self within that choice of your species. So the very earliest of the processes accomplished in this level of energy is self-realization in terms of species coordinates or intents or self-identity. And that may be all that's accomplished for an indefinite period of time. Ordinarily, one would spend a long time in observation. The first time one is experiencing this energy level, it's very much like life or death. One has to become accustomed or acclimatized to the possibility. One learns to move around, one finds their way around. Since you are well familiar with this bank of information, this knowledge pool, you know how to use it. You know how to access it. It's very similar to your libraries. You know that by focusing your will, by desiring information on any particular area of human experience, you can, by willing it, access it. But this may not be self-evident to somebody who is new here, experiencing this level for the first time. This level of energy is passed through on the way from being into human in physical. And so this could in no way be less than the second time this level is experienced after death, because completely new energy coming out from God into their species choice spend time working at this level. And then we reacquire that self-directedness and purpose of what you're doing in this level after death the next time you're here. As you know at this point, and as anyone would know at this point, this is a very individualistic task. You figure it out. You coordinate your focus and direct it yourself. But all the steps leading up to being here were lessons in doing this. So to self-direct reality by now is not a foreign idea. To express a desire for information on a certain experience is to be able to access it. So it's not as if this takes as much time to acclimatize your self-continuing energy. It's just whatever time needs to be taken to refamiliarize yourself with this particular type of directedness, and all the possibilities is taken. You see, the decisions and choices made by the individual are made on what to access at this level. Just as you know in life, you look immediately around you. There is so much going on in life that humans do on so many different levels. You could spend an endless amount of time exploring the human experience on this level. But gradually you narrow it down to the experiences you are most interested in having to do with your particular God-given intent of what is it you want to express and accomplish. It is almost too complex and too comprehensive a variety of possible or potential things to look at on this level than we can even describe. And yes, this level of energy does appear to be a city. It appears to be a city because of the exclusion of other species that you associate with and participate in life with. They're not cats here, not birds, not trees. This is the human experience. And human experience consists of the things humans do. And so this looks like a city because it is fashioned by the experiences strictly or exclusively by your species. And it looks like a city because that would be the human way of differentiating categories or areas. A human's idea of space is architecture, and so the divisions or the categorization of information appears or is related to very much as architecture. And so yes, it does look like cities with roads, which are just connecting paths and energy, with buildings that contain. You see, there are no elements. You are not working with anything like you have in physical. It's a function of delineation, a function of definition, of containerization to specify information having to do with different topics and experiences. So these delineations or differentiations appear as architecture. And of course, it is energy. It is all energy. It is more informational type of energy than anything else here. You also have available to you as a self-knowing, self-willed individual the habitual or possibility for availability of encapsulating the self, so that you can exist or containerize yourself, separate yourself from others, from this information. You can prevent yourself from experiencing what you do not wish to by manipulating this energy in terms of putting a barrier around yourself, a barrier between the self and something you do not wish to experience right now. And so there are what you would think of as houses here, but they are more manipulation of energy around the self as a mechanism of separation. It's just really a setting of yourself apart or aside. People who have visualizations of their own spiritual house is constructed with this particular type of energy and is a derivation of this particular energy level. And so you have these energy constructions, some of which are scaled to suit a particular individual energy or cluster of individual energies. There can be a communal group, for example, a group of people who have been through several incarnations by choice together, and they continue to explore and experience as a group. And so you can have these kind of communal energy surroundings that can be thought of as a house, although you do not need the functions of a house for shelter. The structure is for energy definition. And then there are very large amalgamations of information having to do with particularly the particular experiences that are quote-unquote housed or containerized in what would seem to us to be very large buildings. And this is just to say that the scale of this differentiation in energy, this area, would very much resemble buildings with different sizes relative to what their function was. But again, there's no competition. There is interaction here. It's very much like it is on the planet. You would meet someone and sense whether this was somebody you wanted to share experiences with. Like you do in the grocery store and chat about the price of groceries. And you might pass right by somebody else, even if you were curious about, say, the quality of, again in the grocery store, a particular fruit. There is something in you that would know that, no, you don't want to talk to that particular person. That kind of recognition categorization goes on all the time in this level. It's not as if you are exposed or compelled to exchange communication or information with just anyone you meet. You can definitely pick and choose as you do in life. And you're not compelled. Say you would be at a university. You're not compelled to take every single subject, to become proficient on every single subject. Choice continues to be very much a part of this experience, and so you choose to explore the things that perhaps you are interested in having more understanding of. Now we know that this rhetoric has been very vague about what actually goes on at the hub city. As we have said, it encompasses so much that we have to generalize. We can't be too specific. So in the earliest of participations in this energy level would be an understanding of the self as this particular type of energy, and understanding the manipulation of this particular type of energy in terms of directing yourself to and from places, quote unquote, and in the constructing of protective energy, in what we are thinking of as housing for the self and for functions of non-interactiveness, and also beginning to explore what you want to learn here and what you don't want to learn here. And so you get the idea of what you were doing and where you were going. And it's all taken at an individual pace. You do not feel time here at all. Just as you, from your in-body stance, are able to know of and tap into and draw information from this pool of species experience, this can be understood as a mental function more than a place, to be taken literally as a city. This accessing of information, knowledge, and experience can be understood in terms of a mental process for the individual. If you imagine this place and think of it only as a figment of your imagination in terms of visualization of it being a city, and yet participate in the accessing or withdrawal of information from this pool of human experience, that is perfectly fine. They're trying to say, you don't literally have to think of it as a place at all. You can think of it as a pool of knowledge and information you are drawing on. And you can think of yourself as being in a static state and not necessarily going to this place. But in order to access this information, the visualization that would accompany this most often is a visualization of a hub city. Others have seen it as a seeming city floating in space like a spaceship. It is less of a place spatially than it is a phenomena, a species phenomena. If you need to think of it as a place, that's fine, but you don't have to think of it as a place in order to utilize this information in your experience. As you know, you can access this information from a place in a physical body. So getting back to the type of information that's available here, If you could ever comprehend the gamut of activities that humans have, just at this one time, millions and millions of people's experience on your planet being available, and then add to that any experience of any human being ever had on this planet as being available to you to review, to understand, or to partake of in some way. That will give you an idea of the vastness of information you could have here. Most times when people make a choice of what they are looking for here in terms of information, there is somewhat of a thematic choice. This has to do with themes that are chosen repeatedly through lifetimes. For example, you have a theme that has to do with romance versus working relationships. This is one of the themes that you've worked out over a number of lifetimes to see what works and what doesn't in terms of accomplishing what you set out to accomplish by being in physical. Your other themes would be related to health in the human body. Some other person might be fascinated with healing just within their own experience, self-healing versus the mechanics of healing from the outside of the body. They might choose this as a theme and then look at experiences having to do with that. There are artistic themes, emotional themes, scientific themes. There are people very interested in progressions of discoveries in any of the branches of science, so they would pick those themes here. Looking at what other people did and the state of the art of science on the planet and watch or follow that. There are people who are into sports, the physical body, the evolution of physical accomplishments, whether it's ballet, the incredible balance and suppleness of a circus person. So there are physical themes to be looked at here. Media, information, language, there are those themes here. If a person was pursuing those over a number of lifetimes, they would definitely take this time to explore this thematic experience over another one. There are politics, which is a very human preoccupation, the justice system, the legal system. There is the vending and selling, hawking, merchandising. In the olden days, this was seen as more of an exchange of things. Someone may be fascinated with the way exchange of goods happens. Everything from assembling materials to manipulation of materials on any levels of energy on the planet, they would look at this. This is a species-oriented place. There are emotional themes, fear, anger, love, lust, any of the emotions. There's the strong theme of having to do with the species evolution on a particular planet. You always say you would hate to live when there wasn't antibiotics, but you have lived when there wasn't antibiotics, so you knew what it was like, not only for yourself but for others. So there would be people that would look at where the species is headed on this planet in a particular way, say technology. Someone might be interested in the evolution of technology. There are just so many. The whole parenthood theme. Parenthood compared historically and in other areas. There are people interested in the species' interpretation of spiritual themes. Information on all the religions and all their interpretations are here. It is so vast, it's greater than an encyclopedia. An encyclopedia is just facts. This is a library of all human potential experience. And a lot of what is done here to look at human activity in different regions of the world and in different cultural ways of doing things. I mean, for example, the way motherhood in one culture is very different from another culture. So location has a lot to do with human experiences and activities. It's relatively endless what you can explore. So you have to have a particular slant or interest in some way of evaluating what you're going to glean or acquire as information. This has to do with themes chosen throughout many different lifetimes. And the themes have to do with your God-given intent and how best to accomplish that. Your God-given intent may not be consciously known at this level because you're still pretty far in it from your journey out from God and back to God. So it may not even be as conscious as your God-given intent. It may just be what we call an interest. And that interest is reflected as you explore particular themes. Compounding the complexity or confusion to this vast array of offering of knowledge is that the information on this particular level may not have the input of different species on the planet, but each species' informational level is in this same energy field. And so if there was somebody who was particularly interested in learning about a specific species, then they could, from this preoccupation with human experience, cross to the assemblage. And let's just pick an arbitrary species, let's say cat experience. And this information really is categorized by species, because this is the delineation and definition area here. So you do have access, but in a peripheral way. It's not like you could immerse yourself in cat consciousness. You can do this in a more observational way, observe their experience. And as a little side note, when I do this, it's just being on the edge or the lip of the animal's consciousness. But we'll get back to the meditation. So not only is all of human experience available on this level, but in an observational sense, other species' reality of our planet is available in the information. And to compound it even further, there is easy access and exchange about human species experience on other planets. There is interplanetary informational exchange on this area if that is desired, if that is a choice someone makes, to the extent that someone from another planet could pick a culture on our planet to acquaint themselves very well with what it is like to be a human being in a particular place and socioeconomic status in a particular culture that a person could have available to them on this planet. And we can certainly do that for other planets as well. So there is that information that is available at the hub city. Which leads us to the next question. Is there some centralized figure that helps us do this choice making, because there is so much here? The answer is coming. The answer to this should not be taken as literally as it would seem. We're going to be using words such as counselor, such as person. While there are figureheads that dispense information on this level, and that is certainly true, a lot of information is accessed by having a representational form of a person, because otherwise you wouldn't relate to it. A person who would dispense information on a certain topic or subject. You have met several of these figureheads, and these figureheads are the source of the Jungian archetypes. They do appear to us to be large and mythological, but they also appear to us to be people, certainly on a grander scale than we are as individuals because of what they're representing. Well, I can't say knowledge, because what goes on in this place is all of human experience, and much of human experience is very negative, and it is very hedonistic. I mean, you can tap into everything that a human has ever thought. Now, you don't want to think these thoughts, and you don't want to know a lot of those thoughts. So this is not something that you particularly would be interested in showing your mind. Think of it like what comes across in media. There is violence as part of what humans do. If you're interested in that, you might watch a lot of violence. If you're interested in fear and horror, you watch a lot of horror films. If you're interested in football or sports, you watch a lot of sports. So just like our media, there is a myriad of offerings through all the different channels. Yet you would only tune into and focus on the stuff that is really interesting to you. You would consider it a waste of time if you were really into horror films to watch a golf game. It's not correct to say that what is available for here is knowledge, because what is available for us here is all human experience, and a lot of this experience is very denigrating and very destructive, very unappealing to people who have any carefulness or care about themselves. And yet, if you've ever watched any little boys playing, there is a real fascination with that aggression and horror and fear. So it would be misleading to think that everything here is cheerfulness, happiness, light, and positive information, because a lot of what goes on with people is very unpositive. You have to make your choices about what you're going to focus your attention on. These figureheads represent as much the descending process for humans as much as ascending. And there is the neutral territory of just science and physicalness, which to us is neither ascending or descending. There is such a large range possible here. And yes, you do have some help in accessing what you want to explore. That help can be termed in your vernacular a life counselor or life counseling intelligence. Now, we don't have to get too technical, but suffice it to say that your counselor, your life counselor, is you. Your life counselor knows you really well because you are a part of this counselor, and this counselor is a part of you. And so it is less to think of your life counselors as different people. They are a more comprehensive understanding of what you want to do. And the visualization for this help is often accessed as a person, which is not to literally interpret the visualization as a person. The type of mental activity that is possible at the hub city in energy is often seen as an end in itself to the individual for extended periods of time. What they have here is the opportunity for exploring the incredible range of human experience, but also here is the first potential toward interacting that is available since people have left their bodies. You can and do interact with people here. Exchange, acknowledging each other like we do on Earth. I mean, it doesn't all happen in these great amalgamations or thematic experiences, what we would think of as the great universities, schools, or fountains of information. It can happen on a one-on-one basis. We can open up our drives of stored lifetimes and share them with each other, bask in the recognition or acknowledgement of another person. So this level of species identity is oftentimes seen as an end in itself. The experiences possible here are participated in for long, long periods of time, of what we relate to time here in physical, without a real focus or planning for the next life, or looking forward to the next incarnation, or looking even in that direction. So the hub city really does seem like heaven to a lot of people. It seems like the apex, except that they know they are not with God, they are with other people. And a lot of people would rather be with God than to be with other people. So I took a break right there. And I think I'm going to stop this here because that actually moves into a different type of function. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for coming. Thank you for listening.